downward trend in terms of the number of audits that were actually done, particularly in the water space? Is there a reason for that?
No particular reason was given at the time from those teams, but as I said, there is a rebound, so there was discussions with the GM in that space around team's performance, and they have recovered quite significantly.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions or comments? All right, no further questions or comments. Can I have a mover for the recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Craig. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Stella. Further discussion on the recommendation. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. It's carried. Emergency Management Risk Report. Thank you, Simon. I've already actually Simon for that already. All right. Thank you again. Nice to see you again.
Tēnā koutou katoa. The Emergency Management Report, I will take it as read. There are some highlights I would like to just point out in the report. One of them is that recent government changes have moved the responsibility of emergency management. They've upgraded it within council to it's now one of the core services within council. So that's important to note as we progress through with emergency management. Also like to say that having started the Emergency Management Wairarapa office on the 1st of July, I've managed to work with the GMs across the 3 councils, and we've developed a strategy. We're just documenting that up. But out of that, it's really important just to understand that we're also looking to consolidate the risk framework for emergency management. So each council has its own risk profile as it affects the council. The Emergency Management Office is looking across the Wairarapa, and there may be some risks that we're identifying that councils may not have incorporated previously, so that's going to be important for future council as well. Under the strategic planning, spending time developing the workforce, council employees are recruited to work in emergency management during an event. We provide them with training. What we're looking at here is actually formalising that training and professionalising that workforce so they have a more structured approach, and the benefit is that we're able to integrate that with council training. So a very good example of that is if somebody's wanting to get leadership experience, we can bring them into emergency management and they can become a function manager in emergency management during an event and take leadership of a group of people. So there's opportunities now to benefit on both sides. So it's less of emergency management taking, it's more of, I think there's opportunities here. And we've got some really good people we can offer very good opportunities to. And under the policy, just reviewing, emergency management will take a more active role in reviewing council policy and just seeing what opportunities there are to align them with emergency management objectives. As long as the risks are known to council, then council can make the decisions around that with that better profile. Also important to note that the government has released a roadmap strengthening emergency management. What I'd like to state here is that the Wairarapa Emergency Management Office has been very fortunate to be able to participate in a number of the workshops that have resulted in this strategy roadmap being released by government. So we've been working with teams from other councils around the country in Wellington as we are putting forward the experience that we have had from the recovery over the last 2 years and our emergency management knowledge of what we found, particularly from the North Island weather events that occurred back in February 23. Now the experiences of bigger councils is quite different to what we experienced, and so that's been really important to have that voice and be able to raise that. And finally, when we're talking about our people, we induct people into the emergency management support here. You'll notice the exercise Wairere that we had back in May. It was based on an extreme weather event, based on what actually happened on the 1st and 2nd of May. And one of the pieces of feedback that we had, that our traditional pathway is you provide an introduction, you can take people into your exercise. Those people felt lost. We had about 50% of new people. They felt quite lost in the exercise. They weren't actually as good at supporting as we might wanted them to have been. And so what we're looking to do now is, as part of the workforce planning, is completely change around what we're doing so that they actually feel more comfortable when they go into the room knowing what they have to do. So we've got some strategies around training, offers of getting people into different exercises before they come into the room. And that will certainly help me during a real live event. And if, the tsunami is a good exercise of a real event that just happened, we were fortunate it wasn't more severe. But we would have been able to cope with the resources we have, but I want to improve that. I want to give everybody a good chance to actually respond well. And the last thing is we have a whole lot of really good tools that are coming available via Remo back out into the councils. And one of them is an online tool. Somebody notices a tree down, they're able to put it onto their app. That then shows up immediately in the operations centre. So we can see it, we can start directing people around it. Advise Wellington free, they can't send ambulances down that road, that sort of thing. It's a really good technical implementation. We're looking to improve it to make it a more people-centric implementation and embed good practices and policy around use and exposure to that technology. They're probably the key things I wanted to cover off. If there are any questions.
Thank you. Questions for Simon? Councillor Goodwin?
Does the emergency management response, if we're looking at providing a space for that, it's obviously a regional issue, I would imagine. Do you talk to some of these other people about maybe contributions to assist us to provide?
I'm sorry, I probably just need to get a bit of clarity about what the question is. What, you mean the outside of this region?
Yes, yes.
And asking for support if we need it?
Yes, because I believe it's a regional emergency management response,
yep.
is my understanding of it, but I just don't get where the regional funding sits to match the response.
Right, so from a response itself, the three councils have agreed that they'll combine together to create an emergency operations centre, so that is the initial response. So we activate that here, and that's the responsibility of the three councils.
So is that three councils or four?
Well, it's actually the four, I think, but the three councils plus Greater Wellington. And Greater Wellington is more of, can they support us at the time? Do they have people available in the office here that can come in? They generally provide us around about 25% of resources, and usually quite highly qualified. From a support perspective, people support, we can pull on Remo resources unless it's a region-wide event, and then they're generally stretched and remain more in the Wellington region or wherever the significance of it. If it was significant here and they were able to get to us, we would use not only Remo, but Upper Hutt and Lower Hutt have offered us direct support as well. As we have offered to Nelson recently when they went through their flooding, we were offering to send people down to support them. Does that answer the question for you?
It doesn't.
I think Councillor Goodwin's asking
Spit it out.
for Carterton and for South Wairarapa to
And Greater Wellington.
contribute towards the capital costs of any new EOC.
Yes,
probably a question that I'm not able to answer.
Would have been
You put
easier
it
just to
very
say it.
Yeah, it's not a question I can actually answer because the EOC is infrastructure, which comes back down to council. So I'll defer back to either.
So that never comes up
CEO.
in your conversations?
No, I get placed.
Just operation?
Yeah, I get placed in a room that the councils provide.
Experience. Can I just answer that from my experience when I was a chief bean counter with a council? So Western Bay and Tauranga City had joint sewer defence operations for a very long time, basically since 1989, right through until recently. The facilities were at Western Bay because Tauranga City is actually almost in a flood zone. we pay for the entire complex of all the generator, the hard, the additional costs for putting the roof on for volcanic, because that was one of our risks, including the generator, which didn't work on the first try. But anyway, right, so that was at all at our cost because we used it predominantly, and I think in my 14 years there was only one event that was declared in Tauranga.
So
not Western
Tauranga
Bay.
never contributed?
They didn't contribute to Western Bay's hard infrastructure cost. They just contributed the appropriate staff. That's the
Possibly,
appropriate
I don't know your scenario, but of course the difference here might be in that we also provide an aerodrome which has a certain emergency capability. We don't
I'm not arguing the point. I'm just saying.
We don't get any help on that.
Well, I think also the other districts have their own emergency operations centre that we don't fund. It just happens to be running out of wherever the event might be. If it's at Cape Palliser, we'll be running out of the South Wairarapa building. So it's just because we have it combined doesn't mean that it's combined assets. But I do see your point. So
It just should be part of the conversation. That's all I'm saying.
It has been brought up.
Right, moving on. Right.
Same with Warwick.
Well, I think Tim
No, the CE's asked my question.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, Maribel, did you?
No, you can go.
Simon, you briefly touched on the exercise you had, and a lot of the personnel weren't quite up to it. Was that because they hadn't been trained properly, or what? Can you just sort of...
So many of them are new to council over the last 12 months, and they've probably been through one training course, and we put them into an exercise on the basis that there is a plan for bringing in semi-experienced and non-experienced people, thinking the non-experienced would actually learn from participation. But we actually had far too many people turn up who were not fully experienced, and that was where our pressure point came. And I'm trying to manage that training component so that we don't get into that situation again, and we can be a lot more supportive of all the people at the lower end to get the necessary training before they go into a more pressured environment.
It's too late when the event happens.
Exactly. And it's too difficult for the function managers to try and manage 4 out of 6 people who have no idea what they're doing, even though we've got bodies.
Kia ora, thank
Kia ora.
you for your report. How many of if we had an emergency and Wellington and Hutt Valley were called in over here to help out, would you still be in charge, or would they take over from you? Or?
So what we do is we run a controller who runs for an 8-hour shift. So what we have managed to do this time last year would have been me and 2 others, and it would have been tight. No, we would have continued to run it, but if we brought in others, we may bring in controllers who can then relieve us, and then they would run it, because we're all trained in the same way. So it's not so difficult. As long as we've got local people who know what's happening in each of the function desks, then it's much more achievable to have a more successful response and then move into recovery.
Right. And how many people do you have working with you? Here.
It's just me at the moment. I've got an ability to get another. Well, I have a person for 1 day a week on the welfare, and that's a shared role across the 3 councils. And I have the ability to recruit another half person. I'm just trying to decide what that half would look like for the next 6 months or 12 months, and where that we'll get the best bang for buck. Cheers.
So we're not, what you're saying is we're not allowed to clone you.
Sorry?
We're not allowed to clone you.
No.
Thank you.
Simon, kia ora, thank you for the report.
Kia ora.
Just really interested in the engagement, obviously, with the Iwi and Hupper and Marae. We have a number of Marae that play a civil defence emergency service role. And so just, know that there have been discussions. But can you just give us an update on how those relationships are going, perhaps where there's a need for improvement, or just how they're operating?
I think the relationships are known, but from a civil defence emergency management perspective, there's always going to be room for improvement. So the exercise we're having in November, we're looking to do a greater engagement out, and in the past I've been talking to Maharangi,
Yeah, absolutely.
And what I'm really keen to do is we have two people in council in Masterton and South Wairarapa who act as our po ahuriri, and they do a lot of liaison back out to iwi during the exercise events or simulate what that would look like. But we have an opportunity of changing that around a little bit, because when talking to Rangatani, they expressed an interest of actually being in the room or being more active. And so the best way we can do that is to run an exercise and say, well, how best can we integrate with you to support you during this, and what would you require? So that's what I'm hoping to do in November.
Just a comment, and that is, really pleasing to hear the relationships that are being built. I was aware of the simulation in November, so really keen to see how that tracks.
Yeah.
And thank you for the good work that's been done today.
Kia ora, thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions, any further comments? So we've got a recommendation there. Do I have a mover? Councillor David, second Councillor Goodwin. All right, any further discussion on the recommendation? All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Carried, thank you. Next report, 5.10, our draft full financial operating report and commentary. Thank you, Mr. Curtis.
Thank you, Chair. The interim report is to the 30th of June, so it's the 12 months full financial year, and we've put together as much information as we can at this draft point. We're still in the process of reconciling capital expenditure in particular, and making sure accruals for any expenditure and income that relates to last financial year is in the system, but this is the best information we have at the moment. The overall position in terms of an accounting surplus deficit is an $8 million surplus. The budget was for 12, and the reasons for that lower than budgeted surplus are many and varied, and they all add up to a $4 million number, but nothing to be concerned about, because it usually relates to revenue that we budgeted to get to spend on capital, and one of those would be the airport. Another one is the cyclone repairs. Another one is NZTA subsidies that we didn't get for the likes of footpaths, that was to be capital spent. So we haven't had the revenue, so it doesn't fall to the surplus bottom line. The unders and overs are explained in the commentary in the report. The statement of rates requirement, so the reconciliation between what we set in terms of rates versus what we've spent net of any other revenue, is very close, 0.4% underspent, so we've come in on budget. We haven't run a big surplus in terms of the rating expenditure levels. And again, there's unders and overs. There's some areas with overspends. There's areas where there's been better revenue. The building consent revenue is about 50% up on the plan, and it's helped to run a decent surplus in that department. Stormwater, as you heard before about stormwater complaints, we've overspent the stormwater budget because we've gone in and cleared streams, and we spent more than we had in our maintenance budget for that work in response to those complaints. So the ability to do that and balance budgets by spending more, knowing we've spent or spent less in other areas of the overall council business is useful, but we do try and make sure money is spent where we've budgeted it to be spent. And at the end of the day, the financial result just reflects those unders and overs versus plan. I don't think I had any other specific things. I'm happy to take questions.
Councillor Beeks, thank you.
Thanks, David. This is where my footpath question comes in. So we talked about on page 45 a performance measure for our footpaths going from 94% down to 85%. then on page 84 of this report, we talk about that pavement renewal rehab was underspent by 280k. So my first question is, you'd naturally assume that there's a correlation between the underspend on pavements and the fact that the performance measure has dropped. My first question is there? Second question is, why was there an underspend? Is it because people can't do the work, blah, blah, blah? But it just worries me that if we've underspent now and the performance measure is below where it should be, that we won't make that ground up.
Firstly, the reference to pavement is road pavement, not footpaths.
Well, there you
Pavements
go.
and footpaths are two different things. Pavement is a roading component of the road.
So you've answered
A
the
road
question.
is made up of base course and seals. The seal is also a pavement. So the terminology it can be confusing, but there is a footpath budget, and we had budgeted to spend a number. I can't remember what that is, but and that was subsidised by NZTA, and then they reduced the amount. The council hasn't received the subsidised amount, but it has spent what it budgeted to spend from rates. So we haven't cut back the whole program to what NZTA we're going to fund.
Just 46% of it.
Is there a correlation between though not spending as much and
I don't know that
and the performance?
that's the case. The all sorts of factors, wet winters, moss build up, other things can have an impact. The budget provides a number of kilometres of renewed footpath surface every year. And there's a maintenance budget for going out and spraying moss and fixing up deteriorated footpaths, but most of the budget is spent on renewing a surface in a decent length of surface. And that program is done every year, and there's so much we do. So if there's less money available, we can do less metres, but we're still doing what we can afford to do. So I wouldn't say that it's an immediate impact of doing less metres of renewed footpath surface because there's less money, relates directly to the reduction in satisfaction or more complaints about footpath surfaces. I don't think there's a direct correlation.
And you won't find out because we're not doing a survey until March.
It's not far away, no?
You may have a comment or a question there, Councillor.
We sort of can find out through the service requests where the complaints come from and what they're related to. Like, it could simply be that we did tree trimming in a street and we blocked the footpath off for that period of time, and we've received complaints. So it doesn't necessarily just mean the quality of the footpath, but look, if we have more money, we'll spend more money.
The reason for the question is really, is there a trend that we need to be aware of, and if so, how do we address it, or if not?
Yeah, well, that hasn't been brought to my attention as such as a trend of something that's occurring, so I think we'd jump on that pretty quickly, but but we can look into that more and come back with more information if you like.
Question, just a query on, I thought there was a trend in spend on roading and rehabilitation and reseal. I thought that's been evident for this term of an underspend.
Well, it's about price. You were talking about NZTA funding. Is that correct? And if the funding doesn't occur, then we either top that up out of rates or we continue to pay a higher portion.
That's a very good point. Yeah, I think you make a very good point, but it does make the query of, was any NZTA funding decline for rehabilitation or resurfacing? My understanding it was other work. So it's just, it's complicated, isn't it? If you ask for the wrong word, well, if you stick your neck out and ask for stuff when NZTA's saying they've got no money, it's risky that it'll get funded, whereas we're talking about another aspect, which is a bit more basic, I suppose. But, well, it's no more basic, but it's...
I think we can confidently say that where there is opportunity to get funding from NZTA, we are doing that in every instance. But in the last 12 months, you would have seen the trend across the country, and that is that there is less money available from NZTA. I can't connect all of the dots right now in terms of your question, Councillor Johnson, but I'm happy to come back to you on that.
Thank you.
Yeah, Councillor Tim and Councillor Snow.
Thank you. Just following on from Bex's question, so this is something we need to be aware of. So if, for example, the government subsidy is cut by almost $1 million for roading and there's a 10% reduction in the satisfaction, perhaps we need to just be given the options to use rates to actually meet that shortfall. So I do remember Kane saying that when we don't meet the required amount of work and repairs, things deteriorate faster. He specifically said that.
There's a level of risk with that though, because it's a little bit like if the government doesn't stump up the money, the council say, do you know what, we'll do it. And it's unlikely that the government's going to stump up with money the year following. So it's a little bit like I don't want to say a bit of a standoff, but to an extent, if you can get that extra funding from the government to assist, that's the best way of doing it by far, than us then saying, okay, because we haven't been able to achieve that subsidy, we're just going to top it up and do it anyway. I think that works against the city, against the district to an extent, but we've got to find the balance on that, don't we?
Yeah, it is a balance, and I guess, we shouldn't always be quite cynical at times, but we should be cynical about those things, and just, if there's a demand for something that's so basic and such a key part of infrastructure, I don't think you can do a lot of fight around the table. And just one other thing, just with personnel costs on page 79, so they're the same this year as last year, but that's because we're absorbing some costs around restructuring. Did I read that right or incorrectly?
They're on budget. There isn't a last year figure on
sorry, I beg your pardon. They're on budget for this year, so I said that incorrectly. But that's because of absorbing some restructuring costs. So next year, if that absorption already has been done, then they should be less. Would that be right?
Should be less, but there's also, through PSA agreements, there's movement that we need to obviously, pay movements that we need to adjust. So,
the salary number has been set in the annual plan. So I don't know what that is off the top of my head, but it's there's a new budget number next year.
The next year's will be less than it would otherwise have been, regardless of PSA requirements, because the absorption that's happened this year.
Sort of. If we go back a year prior, because the restructure occurred then, all the costs fell into this year that's just closed off, so therefore we had to carry the redundancy cost and try and catch up through operating more efficiently, and we've been able to do that. And then we start again with a new budget into the next 12 months. So it's really a pretty good success when you think about the funds that we've had to recover through the 12 months. So it would demonstrate that we were more efficient than what we were prior. And we would hope that that would continue.
Thank you. Just great to see Morley Park, 3% ahead on plan for revenue, so things are looking up there. The unplanned external income that we got for the library and archive, could that be investigated to then become planned? Is that something that we could, I don't know where it's come from or who's given the external...
They apply for grants for programs that they run, so they're one-offs. If we budgeted for it and we didn't get the grant, then we'd be reporting a negative variance. So
no, that's okay, cool. So they're just grants and not someone who wants to sponsor the library on an ongoing basis. Okay, that's a shame. The second one is just around the parking control surplus. Obviously that's gone up considerably because of the infringement notices, but my question is that a ticketed amount or is it an in the bank amount? Because obviously there's issuing tickets and then there's people paying tickets.
Yeah.
So until the money's in the bank, it's not
It's a combination of both. There is a debtors amount at the end of the financial year of tickets that have been issued that haven't been paid, and that some of those have gone to court, and then it's in the court system for them to collect, and we'll get the money back from the courts. But we've made a reasonable doubtful debts provision against the unpaid sums, and still have achieved that higher revenue number, and also paid the police for 50% of the cost of the infringement notices for unregistered and unwarranted, which is a requirement of us
carrying out the work.
issuing those infringements.
Thank you, that was all.
Okay, Councillor Goodwin.
No, I found the answer.
You found the answer, well done.
With the infringement notices for not having
The registration
your
and warrants.
registrations, how do we collect that?
Well, the infringement notice is issued to the owner of the vehicle, and so they receive that, the same as a parking ticket, as I understand it. So they come into the council and pay that infringement.
Right.
Might I make still as a first-hand example?
They can pay it. They can pay it online if they want, as long as they put the right reference.
To us.
Yeah, otherwise we'll put it in their rates account. If they quote the wrong reference number.
All right. Any other questions? David, Mr Chief Executive, good result on only less than 0.5% on surplus of rates of 208,000. But are there any carried forward, you know what I mean by carried forward projects in there? Because I'm working with one council at the moment, they said, we've got a rate surplus of, in your case, 208, but we're carrying forward $400,000 worth of projects, and the next year you're actually blowing your budget by $200,000. You're not doing that, are you? You'd know better.
No. Where we predicted some carry forward funding in our annual plan, we've allowed for that. And some of the environmental projects, for example, the projects funded by the waste levy, we've allowed for spending in next year's plan, but allowed for the carry forward in next year's plan.
But that figure on the bottom of page 81 is pure rates, isn't it? That's
yes.
the rate. But you're not carrying forward any of that rate operational funds, or if you are, how much do you know?
Well, there's nothing allowed for in those numbers, but that the $200,000 can be applied to carry forward reserve funds.
Right. But you're not double counting.
I'm not double counting it.
Okay, that's right.
No.
Some councils are.
Yeah.
They're digging themselves a hole.
Yeah. No,
We're more savvy than
we're
that.
not allowing. The intention would be that the next iteration of this coming back to the council in the September meeting before audit would be a recommendation for where to allocate those carry forward funds
Thank you.
to.
Perfect. Good answer, Councillor Tim, you got a further question, or you want to make?
Thank you. Just one more question. Just on page 80, when we've got the personnel costs, and then you've got the other operational expenditure. That would include things like people doing contract work for us, wouldn't it?
What
Contracts. Yes.
Well, it's everything else. It's the Green by Nature, it's Higgins, City Care, Belgravia. So that it's solid waste, all of the solid waste contract costs. So those are all external costs as opposed to internal staff costs, which is the other line.
Yeah. So they're people doing work for us.
Yes. They're just not necessarily on the payroll.
Yeah.
They're
But
contracted.
payroll through being contracted.
Well, we don't have a lot of, if you're thinking about staff member, contract staff, no, we have contractors like Green by Nature. But if you're thinking personnel that come in and sit down and grab a seat here in the building, they're contractors.
That's not what I mean.
Yeah, so
It means we have people, we contract services out and people do those services for us.
that's right, like Belgravia, various others. So, absolutely.
Councillor Goodwin?
The Trust House Recreation Centre cost explosion. is that going forward, I mean, it's a mammoth blowout, so will we be looking at the revenue we generate in that facility fairly quickly? Will we need to put up the charges? Is that going to be an annual thing? It's a very big change in the budget.
In the annual plan, you resolved to increase the payment to Belgravia by about 240,000 around that figure. So that's already been agreed to.
There was that, but it's the electricity cost that we're now wearing that is apparently the chief component of this. And it all adds up to, 0.75% extra on rates. Well, close.
So what's the question?
So the question is, what do we do about it? I mean, it's not very long ago when Belgravia took over, I seem to recall our operating costs before we put a bit more into capital expenditure was down to about 1.4, and now we're looking at, 1.8, something like that, 1.9 actually. It's a big increase in a short time. 1.9. 1.898.
I'm just trying to get to a the rates requirement number that we set in the annual plan in the current year is an increase from last year, and it reflects to some extent the increased costs, increased electricity costs, but we've also tendered the operational management of the facility, and Belgravia have been appointed again at a lower cost, a lower figure, and so our budget reflects that for next year. So I'm just trying to find the...
I'm just looking at the LTP rather than the annual plan, sorry, and it just looks like a very big increase, and with summer coming up, when the usage is peak, I just wonder if we should be talking about, any chance to increase the revenue.
We've just done a price increase.
Yeah, well, the price increase was done as part of the user fees and charges this year. So the next opportunity would be the next annual plan. Unless...
Well, Oz, did you want to have any other comments at all?
The only thing I can add is that we have recognised that electricity costs have been the main driving factor for the increased cost of running the whole facility. And so once the rear 5-lane pool roof is refurbished, we're going to be exploring opportunities for solar energy so that we can try and offset some of the expenditure that we're having to cover with those increased power costs.
And on that note, EECA still work alongside us around grant funding for solar?
We have to keep our finger on the pulse to see when they opportunities pop up.
Yeah.
So
definitely an external funded part, external funded project.
The annual plan for the current year, this requirement is an 11.4% increase from the 1.68 million last year's plan to 1.808 in this year's plan.
Right, so it's only 100 grand short.
Well, it's $120,000 more than the previous year's budget, and our expectation is that 1.8, we should be living within that this year. It shouldn't blow out the way it has last year.
And I mean, we need to get that ongoing. It's like discussion about depreciation on that facility. Sorry. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Any comments? I've got one, Mr. Chief Executive. Well done on your capital expenditure, 82% overall. In fact, I think your water's is the highest I've seen in the countryside. Congratulations.
Say that again. So the highest.
Highest water spend.
Yeah.
They actually overspent their water by 70 $6,000, which is a pretty darn good result, right? I mean, the sector's been criticised heavily for not spending its budgets, right?
Yes, and it only took how long?
Well, let's not go there, Councillor.
here, Brent.
Yeah, longer than, right? Yes, thank you.
Some of that is better off funding that's still coming through the system. Some of it's resilience funding
Oh,
that...
David, you're spoiling there.
Right, take the win when you can, David. Right, recommendation, we've got a recommendation that we receive the financial report in commentary, moved, seconded, Councillor Stella. All those in favour, please say aye. As we've been going for more than 2 hours, let's have an adjournment for 10 minutes and reconvene at 1:15.
Thank you.
Let's reconvene. Our next item is our rates receivable report. Oh, Mr. Harris has run away. Oh, just in time, David. Right, take your report as read, David. Any further information?
No, I think the report is self-explanatory.
Thank you. Questions?
I've got a comment.
Comment? Any questions? Question?
Yes. It says invoke legal steps to initiate rating sale as a last resort. I presume that means that you there's a forced sale.
Sorry?
Does that mean that it's a forced sale?
Yes, yes.
So how often would you do that?
Not very often. There've been 2 occasions in my time, and that's quite a long time.
How long's that, David? Let's not go there.
That we've got close, and neither of those have actually resulted in the sale, and that the ratepayer has fronted up or arranged someone to pay the outstanding amount for them.
Now, does that happen with all of the ones that are late? Do they all have to pay?
Yes.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Tim?
Yep, on page 87, can you just explain the second paragraph, David? It starts at the 30th of June. So does that mean, the way I read it, so the number of people in arrears is increasing, no, is decreasing, but the amount of people, the amount that the other people owe is increasing, is that right?
Yeah, there's some analysis in there around the average outstanding. So the numbers have gone down, but the dollar value's gone up. So the average has gone up, but the average that is outstanding per property. But the total dollars that we've collected or levied in rates in the last 12 months is 12.5% more than the year before. And our Masterton's rates were 11.5% increase. The regional councils was a bigger increase, so overall 12.5% more. The outstanding amount has gone up 10% in dollar terms. So it's gone up by less than the rates increase.
So I've read it correctly on that graph on page 68. Sorry, on page 88, I beg your pardon. So the arrears in June 2021 were 550,000, June 22 were 600,000, June 23 840,000, June 24 1,150,000, and June 25 1,150,000. So it's doubled since 2021, according to that graph. Am I correct?
Yes, on the first graph, but the third graph, you can see the one that's called year-end rates
Is that
received.
page 89?
As a percentage of the total rates levied, it's 2015 it was 1.7%, it's now 1.83%.
So is it the last 3 years, including this year, have been the highest in this measurable period?
Yes.
Yes.
But it's pointing down now.
But anything under 2% is a pretty good result.
Yeah,
The fact that it's been down at 1.3 was a very good result in those years.
but also we've had population growth.
So is that still my question? So is that a good result you're saying for this year? How many people would that be? How many ratepayers do we have?
That's 728 properties,
Yeah.
which is 5.3% of the total number of properties have some level of rates arrears. And that might only be $10, that they haven't fully paid their rates off for the year, so that it ranges. And again, on the page there's the numbers of properties with different amounts outstanding.
Lots of graphs. So lots of graphs saying the same thing but in different ways. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm trying to give you as much information as possible.
Yeah, but lots of graphs say the same thing in different ways. There's the one on the top of page 89. You've explained the impact of the graph, the long-term effects on the graph on page 88. So I need to sit down and read those two graphs really carefully to make sure I'm really clear on the impact on why the rates have doubled in the last 4 years.
It's not about the level of rates.
Yeah.
That's annual plan and long-term plan decisions about the level of rating. This is about how much of the rates that have been levied haven't been collected, or at the end of the financial year people haven't paid. And you'll see the very small proportion at the end of the financial year that relates to prior financial years, which is very small.
And how many of those, what percentage, David, would you know how many were rural rates?
Of
in arrears?
Of the 1.15 million, about 280,000 is rural, which is 25%, which is around the total rates levied from rural was 25% of total rates. So rural is not any different proportion than any other type of rate pay.
Councillor Goodwin.
I suppose, David, you could say, and it's partly your team's efforts, that ratepayers prioritise paying their rates, which is sort of like the central government saying that you've got to pay your essentials first, and that comes ahead of any other spending.
I feel this is
Like
getting into
this
a
really-
bit of politicking now, this whole sort of thing, rather than talking to the report or questions of the report. So,
I just congratulate
Yeah, we've got questions on the report. Okay, question?
Could I just ask another question?
Your let's go, Councillor Stiller, then I'll go back.
You can go first, Stella.
Oh yeah, mine was just around the rate rebates, and which is great, and that doesn't come out of our pocket. It's a central government initiative, which is fantastic. But my question would be, is the awareness around that, I suppose, and how many people may or may not. I have lots of conversations with people that don't even know that the rebate is a thing, or so I wonder if there's many people in that percentage of arrears that are unaware, and I'm sure though we tell them unaware of the rebate in the scheme and how it can benefit them.
Yeah, any conversation we have with the ratepayer who's getting behind, we would suggest the rebate scheme as an option to help them pay their rates if we think they could qualify. The government's recently this year put in more incentives for people on super gold cards, so that there's a greater level of rebate available to pensioners, superannuitants, but a low income household can qualify for rates rebates. And when we talk to them, we'll make sure they're aware of that, but we'll also go through a round of advertising after the first instalment's over. At the moment we're doing 30 or 40 rebate interviews a day.
Wow.
Up until the 20th of August, so that the first instalment of rates due. Trying to process as many rebate applications as we can before that first instalment.
Okay. Councillor Tim, then Councillor Goodwin.
I just caught the end of that. So is it 30 or 40 people applying for rebates a day?
We've got them booked up 4 weeks solid of bookings, morning and afternoons, with 2 staff processing those applications.
People asking for rebates.
People coming into the council reception and sitting down and having their rebate process. Yes.
Well, 30 to 40 a day. Sorry, can you explain? I don't understand how the graph works on page 89. Have you given us the information? I actually don't understand it. How does it work?
Which one?
The top one. The year-end rates receivable.
It's the blue bars are the dollars on the left-hand scale, and the right-hand scale is the percentage of the receivables as a percentage of what has been charged. So if rates for the year is 50 million,
yep.
That 1.83% is the percentage outstanding of the 50 million of rates that was levied.
Yeah, I see. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Goodwin, you have a question?
Is there a correlation between overdue rates and people, or can you do a correlation between people who got a rate-free rate and overdue rates. That might be that they may be people struggling more, be most of those rate arrears. I'm just curious.
We may be able to do a query on the rating database
Yeah.
to
And
track
what would
that.
that achieve?
No, it's just
Okay, moving on, thank you. The answer is no, we don't have the information at the moment. Councillor
I've got,
Dixon?
my comment is I was,
I've got a question,
you don't,
Mine's a comment as well.
okay, comments? Yeah,
okay,
thank
my
you.
comment is I was disappointed with the Wairarapa Times Age